The Buteyko breathing method is now an international phenomenon. It started with its development by Konstantin Buteyko when he was a medical student back in the 1950s, observing dying people breathing. And he kept noticing this increase in people's depth of breathing prior to the onset of death. And after seeing this hundreds of times, he started to wonder whether deep breathing was not just associated with dying, but it was also associated with diseases. Because after all, people die from diseases. So his idea, which was pretty radical at the time, was to experiment with getting people to reduce their depth of breathing to see what impact it would have at improving their illnesses. And very quickly he found that his hunch was correct. People started to get a decrease in symptoms, improvement in their sleep pattern, experience less anxiety, have greater energy levels, and as a result they had less requirement for using medications and machines. And he went on to develop what has become known as the Buteyko breathing method. And interestingly, it really didn't change that much in the 50 years from the time that Potako developed it to the time that he passed away back in 2003. So for 50 years he taught individuals, researched the method and trained practitioners. And it took over 30 of those years before he was given formal recognition for his work and discovery in the Soviet Union. Finally, in the mid-1980s, the method was endorsed under ministerial order. And amazingly, during all of that time, the method was virtually unknown outside Russia. And it wasn't until the end of the Cold War, the early 90s, that the method got out of Russia and came to the rest of the world via Australia. And luckily for us here, Australia was the first country chosen. And that was when Alexander Stelmadsky, or Sasha as he's known, came here, started to teach the method in Sydney. And very quickly, word got around, here's this Russian breathing technique. People were sleeping through the night, coming off asthma drugs, clearing their noses, breathing through them consistently. And then in 1991, I think it was, Alexander Stelmadsky teamed up with Christopher Drake. And Christopher is a very entrepreneurial person. And he was the one largely responsible for the media in the early days, the current affairs programs, so many things in the newspapers, on the radio. And as a result of all this media pressure, the first clinical trial of Potako was done in Brisbane at the end of 1994. And whilst the wonderful results of that trial have been internationally recognised and acknowledged, and since then another 6 trials or so have been done with Potako, all showing similarly wonderful results, nothing's really changed in the medical profession in terms of the management of respiratory or sleeping conditions. So what's really happened is that Potako has developed outside the medical profession. The medical profession, I suppose, had a preference for sitting back and just letting it go and seeing what would happen. And as a result of that, we formed the Potako Institute in the mid-1990s, starting as a group of 10 people in Australia and New Zealand, and we've now got over 100 members throughout the world in 15 different countries. So after being introduced to Australia in 1990, Potako from the mid-90s was introduced to the United Kingdom, the United States, the Republic of Ireland, to Cuba, to New Zealand, to Turkey, and also to several other European and Asian countries. Cuba in particular is a unique case in terms of the introduction of the Potako method. And the reason is it was done formally through the government. One of our Potako Institute members had previously done some work in Cuba and had some good contacts there, and over a 2-year period we submitted various information with the result that we were invited to go over there during 2004 and teach the method to what turned out to be 240 individuals and to train 14 Cuban health and education professionals as practitioners. And the Cuban practitioners now actually teach the Potako method as part of their existing jobs with the government. So that really is unique. Everywhere else in the world, as far as I'm aware, people who teach Potako do it outside the health profession, outside the medical profession, outside the education profession. In other words, they effectively set up their own business and practice and do it. Whereas in Cuba, it's very much part of the government infrastructure. Canada is a country which has recently proven to be a bit of a breeding ground for research for Potako. And the background to this is that the parents of a young boy who learnt the method a few years ago and recovered from very serious asthma were so overwhelmed with the results from Potako that they decided to invest money in research. And I understand that they donated something around the order of $1 million Canadian dollars for research of Buteyko. And 3 clinical trials were undertaken at the Calgary Hospital. And the 3 doctors involved in these trials, Dr. Bob Cowie, Dr. Francis Green and Dr. Tamar Almaze, were all guests at our 4th International Potako Conference in Brisbane in November of 2007 and presented the preliminary results from their trials. And I understand there's going to be further research there as well, so that's fantastic. Turkey is another country which has great potential in terms of introducing Potako. Myself and Jill McGowan and Tuba Turan. Tuba was born in Melbourne, parents are Turkish, learnt the method here, got great results, immediately was interested in practitioner training, began that a year or 2 after doing the course herself, did half of her training in Australia and doing the other half in the UK. And through some contacts with her family, she was able to introduce us to people there who are interested in Potako. A couple of courses have been done. There's a good link there with the Lions clubs. I was involved in giving a presentation at a district convention of Lions clubs in Hay, in New South Wales in Australia, back in 2004. As a result of that, they passed a motion to endorse the Potako Institute by setting up free introductory seminars in the rural areas on the Lions premises. And the reason being they know that there's no one there teaching Potako at all. And we've run several courses in those areas as a result. And that was written up in one of the editions of the Potako Update newsletter, which I publish. And the lady that we're dealing with in Istanbul in Turkey was actually a Lions Club president. So she's interested in further exploring that link with the Lions supporting Potako in Turkey.